Your help. Okay, thanks so much.
Good morning, everyone. We'll be starting in a few minutes. Glad that you're all here. Thank you. You've all had the agenda. It'll be short and sweet. A lot on ESSER and Ian's, as well as working through the great work of the negotiated rulemaking with Chapter 55. So we'll be on shortly. Thank you. Righty. Good morning. I appreciate everyone being in attendance today, not taking a roll or anything, but it is summer. So I hope everyone else that's not in attendance is having a wonderful time with family and their community as they enjoy our beautiful state. So we have a very simple agenda this morning. We're going to jump right into it. Wendy, good morning. If you would like to share with us about Ian's, this is the deployment to our non-public education partners.
So I have here on Eanes, I did sort of an overview on the three different visuals that we typically have on our website. One is the thermometer, and then one are the individual buckets for Eanes and ESSER. So I just showed you this in a combined format, but if we go to look at Eanes, the Eanes is for the non-public school use of funds, and those are continuing to be allocated through and distributed through fax, and the individuals who are non-public schools throughout Montana are using those funds continually. They have continued to draw down on those funds and are moving forward with getting everything allocated out. As you can see, the total amount allocated for 1 and 2 was the same amount, roughly 12 million. And the amount that is currently being used is down at the 1 million down here. And we're looking at Eanes 2, which hasn't been expended yet. Those items have just been, that money has been sent over to fax and the allocations to those individuals. And they're drawing down from a workbook created with Excel. It's actually kind of a nice process, and we've gotten some good feedback from the entities drawing down on those funds. If we move into the overall thermostat, again, this is kind of one of those visuals that shows throughout the state how that funding is allocated. One point I wanted to make was on the ESSER 1, we have about 70% that have completely spent all of their ESSER 1 funding. We have about 4% who have 50,000 or more to spend, and the rest are as low as $6. So we're moving forward with that expenditure. We do have on August 9th an ESSER conference, which will be helping districts to use those funds because the ending date is in September. So we're working with districts to be able to completely get this into all the red so that it's all spent out by the end of the year, by the end of September. If we look at the allocation for ESSER. We can again see the total expenditure is 31. For ESSER 2, it's 61. And then for ESSER 3, we have 34. Again, as you go across, you do notice that on ESSER 2 and 3, we are not spending that down as fast, but districts do have plans for that. And OPI has been reaching out to those districts to talk continually with them about how to spend the funds on a lot of large projects which are coming up. And districts are feeling more comfortable now in doing those larger projects. So we're working a lot with safety in school buildings, with water mitigation, and a lot of other opportunities which are there. Again, on August 9th, we will be sharing some of those stories, but also giving some means and tools as to how to help with that process on both the 1, 2, and 3 buckets of funding that we've received. Are there any questions from anyone?
Thank you, Wendy. If you'll notice, these are dated June. No payments go out to schools in July traditionally. The other part, Wendy shared that August 9th, we are going to have an ESSER conference. That's going to be just a breakout room, a virtual conversation with schools, of clerks, school boards, making sure that our school leaders, our superintendents and principals all have the opportunity to visit with our team, our ESSER team here, as well as our school finance team. We know a lot of amendments have taken place. These dollars are very portable and can supplement anything and supplant anything in the general fund that is given from the state. The other part that I want to share is that these dollars cannot roll over to the next year. So why Wendy spoke about, we need to make sure that 41 million is spent by the end of September. It cannot go back to the governor. It cannot be reallocated to other schools in our state. It must go back to the federal government. And I don't want that to happen, as I'm sure everyone on this call wants to make sure that we keep the opportunity of those dollars here in Montana. So any questions you might have of Wendy of the non-public distribution as well as our public distribution with our COVID monies? All right, Wendy, thank you. Appreciate that. Let's move on. Dr. Mergall, let's talk about the great work that has happened in Chapter 55. It has concluded as of last Friday, and we're in the process of making sure that the economic impact statement and that the report of the committee is going to be bundled up and be given to the Board of Public Ed this Friday. So Dr. Mergall, please share.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Superintendent. So Chapter 55, the work of the Negotiated Rulemaking Committee has been underway. We started the work in research here at the agency on Chapter 55 accreditation in September of 2020. We had a task force begin some initial work on January 11th, and they concluded their recommendations to the superintendent on May 19th. The Negotiated Rulemaking Committee started their work on February 4th actually, and just finished their work last Friday on July 15th of 2022. You can locate all of the minutes, meetings, recordings, and all the details of that committee on the OPI website. Just kind of in summary, and I'll be sure that Brian forwards this information to you all. But when we take a look at the work of the Negotiated Rulemaking Committee, they reached consensus on 98% of the rules that were in front of them. And so currently we have 58 individual rules that are built within Chapter 55 under the chapters. There are 5 new proposed rules. Of those rules, there was 14 that there were no recommended changes on. So the remaining 49, the committee did reach full consensus on all of them. They did not reach consensus on one rule, and that is the rule for assignment of school counseling staff, 1055-710. The committee did agree, though, on some language that the superintendent is going to be adopting in the final recommendation for this particular one. The reason that the committee did not reach full consensus was based on the exclusion of ratios. So we will be seeing this come forward with the language that they did set agreement on as to aligning that assignment of school counseling to the program delivery standards and to the supports and services that students need. So that kind of really gives a pretty big overview. You'll see here in this document exactly kind of the red line language that the committee did agree on, that the superintendent is going to move forward to the Board of Public Ed. Also in this document, you'll see really the conceptual changes behind all of these recommendations in this document by the subchapters that give a really nice overview that kind of explain all of the considerations and things that were put into place when the superintendent put those negotiations forward to the committee. So like I said, I'll be sending this to you. You'll also see on this document, just so you know, who the committees were and on the map of where they represent across our state. It was a really great group to work with. We really did a lot of great negotiations and a lot of really good work in thinking about how to really ensure that the accreditation standards are measuring school qualities that really serve our students. So next steps, I just want to spend a few minutes on. So there will be a special Board of Public Education meeting on August 15th, where the economic impact statement and the rule changes will be presented to the Board of Public Ed. So in terms of the economic impact statement, that is required under statute 20-7-101. And so we used that provision to really outline this statement and to develop the survey. We've deployed the survey in 3 different sections, if you will, based on the work of the committee. The first economic impact survey was released on June 20th and closed on July 5th. We had 652 responses. That is a considerable amount more than the previous surveys that we have deployed for Chapter 55. The last one that we deployed for an economic impact survey for Chapter 55 was in 2019 for student performance standards, in which we received 17 responses. So this is an incredible amount of responses, more than we have previously received. The second economic impact statement was then released on the 1st of July and concluded on the 8th, and we had 121 survey responses. The final and third survey was released after the work of the committee on the 15th and will close this upcoming Thursday on the 21st. We do have a link to the third survey that I will drop in the box in case you have not gotten it, or would pass that around and be sure we get the final kind of pieces on that. So really, this survey has kind of been structured for all of the pieces in a similar way to really kind of analyze the stakeholders' perceptions of the impact on operations, budgets, personnel expenses, resources, and professional development. I do want to note that the negotiated rulemaking committee agreed through the consensus process for proposed changes to these rules and identified what should be placed on this economic impact survey. So the first survey that went out, there were 10 items that were listed. The second one, we had two. We added 704 and 705 on the second survey. And this third survey is the 709, which is the staffing and assignment of the library media specialist. The superintendent made the decision to also place 710, the counseling staffing, on that with the language that there was some agreement on, just to get some feedback on that as well. So there will be a total of 14 items that will be summarized within this economic impact statement. I do want to show you just kind of the draft, if you will, table of contents for that. Please let me know, did my screen move with you, Superintendent?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this is, you guys, the draft view of the economic impact statement that the Office of Public Instruction has put together for the Board of Public Ed. And this is the table of contents. And so what you'll see in here is there's an executive summary, there's going to be an introduction, and then starting on number 5, where it starts talking about affected classes of persons, the economic impact, cost and benefits. Those are actually drawn from those 8 items directly from the statute 20-7-101 that really address what the economic statement must include within it. So you'll see in this report that it's aligned very tightly to that statute and summarizes it in that way. And then there will be a conclusion. Included in there will be an attachment, which will have all of the red line versions of the rule changes. It'll have the current, it'll have where the committee reached consensus on those rules. And so that will be included in attachment A. B will be a summary of all of the survey responses. And then C and D will have the task force members and the committee members listed out. And then E really gives a kind of a look of what the survey questions is. So this is going to be a full kind of statement that includes some really critical attachments with it, just to kind of give you a very quick look of what you'll see when we get in here when I'm talking about this is all aligned to the statute in response to that. Again, this is draft. We're still waiting for the final pieces to come in, but it'll have graphs in it showing what kinds of folks responded to the questions, you know, the role that the people were in, so that you can see that. And what we can see right now is on the first survey and the second survey, predominantly K-12 educators have responded to these surveys. And then you'll see a bar showing the rules across that the committee had determined needed to be on this survey. The questions related to the impact on personnel. You'll see a graph related to resources, and then one for professional development. As soon as this gets completed, we will certainly be sharing this with the board and being sure that it's shared out publicly. So again, that's kind of all that I have for you on chapter 55. I just have to say a big thank you to the committee members. Were phenomenal. The representation, the thoughtfulness, the degree in which we worked to reach consensus was quite a phenomenal, and really focused on our students and always put that front and center. So we're excited to be at this final stage and bringing this forward to the Board of Public Ed, and at which then they'll be sharing that. Then the economic impact statement in terms of next steps, the Board of Public Ed will be taking to the Ed Interim Committee. And then from there begins the MAPA process, where it'll open up for public comment. There'll be a hearing set, and all of that is still forthcoming, with the ultimate goal of new rules for chapter 55, hopefully being adopted July 2023 and rolling into place. I stand for any questions that the group might have. And I'm going to be sure to drop that link for that third survey into your chat box now. Thanks, Superintendent.
Questions you might have of Dr. Mergel or the process, either what has happened and occurred or where we are going forward. Steve, you've got your hand up. How can I help?
Quick question. Thank you very much for today's meeting, Superintendent. I'm just trying to understand something that, at least here in the Bozeman area, and it's probably across the state, is related to the public online charter schools. Is that, are they treated just the same way as public schools under Chapter 55? And because I've had some questions from people that, since we don't have charter schools legislatively in Montana, trying to understand is if for people that want to go to the online public charter schools, is it just like a normal school, and is it all part of what what the presentation by Dr. Merkel was just all about?
Thank you, Steve. Great question. You know, I don't think I have an answer for you right at this point. So let me do a little bit of homework with that one. Julie, do you have something you'd like to add?
Absolutely, I can certainly. Hi, Steve. So
Julie.
just a little bit of information about the charter schools. So that currently exists in rule today under 1055-604, the variance to standard process. It's number 11. And so like the online Bozeman Charter School, they applied to the variance to standard board and put in an application that has to come through a local board of trustees in order for that to happen. So when we get that application and it comes in, that variance to standard board reviews that, but it has to be submitted from a local school board, if you will. So that process is already in place. And so you can see kind of the requirements of what needs to be in that application and the process that has to go through. Then it gets sent to the variance to standard, then it'll go to the superintendent for her recommendation, and ultimately to the Board of Public Ed is the one who approves those schools.
So for those charter schools, they have they go through the same accreditation standards as a public school with certified teachers, et cetera, right?
Yes, yes. And so it sure does. And so when you look at that, it is exactly, they have to go through the accreditation process. When they put in their application, that's what they're seeking, is a variance to some of those assurance standards. They're saying in their application, for example, if they're seeking a variance to, let's say, class size ratios, then they would have to seek that particular piece to say, because we're on an online virtual kind of setting, it looks different, right? As to how they will meet that particular assurance standard. So in their application, they have to talk about what it is of how they're going to meet the intent of all of those insurance standards, but in a different way. And then it has to be approved.
So everything you talked about today in your presentation also includes the online public charter schools as all part of that, right?
It is all part of that, but remember, when they're seeking a variance to standards, meaning they are proposing that they're going to meet those accreditation standards in a different method potentially, and while meeting or exceeding student performance standards.
Great. Thank you very much. That's excellent information. That helps me a lot. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Yeah, and Steve, don't hesitate to go online and look up the actual rule, ARM 1055-604, and certainly can give you some more detailed information about what's expected in that application for them to demonstrate how they're going to meet the intention of those standards.
Great. Thank you very much.
Excellent. And what great it is, I don't have to do any other homework, or nor does other staff. Thank you, Dr. Merkel. Pat, you had your hand up as well. How can we help?
Yeah, thanks. Julie, it looked like when you shared what districts had been asked, the various components of the proposed amendments that districts had been asked about for the economic impact statement, it didn't appear to me to include what I see as a new mandate in the amendments that districts develop and implement a proficiency-based learning model. And I'm just curious what the thinking was to not include what the districts thought that might cost them in that EIS. Does that make sense?
So I think that Pat, like it doesn't just, there is a couple of different ways that it does show up on that economic impact statement. For example, in one of the individual rules, it was 10, I'm just looking it up, Pat, 1055-603, which is on curriculum and assessment is what 603 is about. There was a particular piece that the committee had decided to put on there on about expanding multiple measures in district assessment, really the idea of expanding multiple pathways to measure proficiency, Pat. And so we did kind of gather some data in that way as to what that means. So it might not say what's the impact of implementing a proficiency-based model. Rather, it's kind of built within these rules in particular components, if you will, because it even kind of shows up a little bit in like professional development. And so that was kind of put on there about updating the professional development rule, because when you're thinking about, you know, really being sure that you prepare and grow your staff to implement that kind of model, that's included in there. So it's not like one separate individual question. It's kind of built within where it lies in these individual rules.
Thanks, Julie.
Absolutely.
So Pat, since you're going to be the receiver of this economic impact statement for your interim committee, do you, if you have any further questions, you can reach to Dr. Mergel. Again, how this was reached was that the committee reached consensus on each of the individual rules, and then they determined at that time if indeed it needed to be part of the economic impact statement, or the survey, I should say, that went out to more than 20,000 individuals when we deployed the survey. So more information can happen if you want to give Dr. Mergel a call. And I know, Pat, when we talked yesterday, you were looking for a more of a concise document. This document that Julie put up on her screen is something that we'll deploy along with what we had with Wendy in the deployment of the non-public and the public ESSER dollars of the tranches 1, 2, and 3. That'll come to you as soon as we conclude this meeting. But Pat, if you would like any other kind of a document to aid in the education of what Chapter 55 has pretty much amended and gone into from the committee and its process, I'm sure we can easily supply that as well.
Thank you. I've been impressed with everything that's posted on Chapter 55. That's a robust webpage that somebody down there has been managing. Thank you.
Busy, for sure. Any further questions you all might have? Well, wonderful. Thank you very much for attending about less than a half hour. I think that's one of the best Zoom calls we've had in the education advocate world as well. Everyone, please stay well. School is going to be starting before we know it. Just to be a big highlight, we are going to be having an ESSER discussion on the 9th of August. More information will flow out through our compass that happens at the end of the month, but there's also going to be an excellent dialogue. I also want to share that every month we are going to deploy to our school boards and our clerks a document on where we are with the budget of ESSER 1, ESSER 2, or ESSER 3. I think this is great service as our school boards then go through, adopt their budget, as well as any amendments that might happen, as these dollars are very, very flexible and fluid. So everyone, thank you. Blessings to you and your families as we unroll and unwrap the rest of this summer that we have in our beautiful state. Stay well. Thank you.